Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Bethany if you're new here, and I am now currently 37 weeks pregnant. I have less than 2 weeks now until I am delivering my baby boy, at least. So we're gonna have a baby in less than 2 weeks, which is wild. It's so exciting. We're finally at the end, which is so awesome. But today I actually wanted to answer some of your questions, and a lot of these are pertaining to my current C-section or just C-sections in general, because I just find that since I've been having C-sections for all of my births, that there just isn't a lot of resources out there for women who may just want to know like someone's experience with C-sections. I'm not a professional, I'm just a mom sharing my experience with you. So that's what we're gonna be doing today. I'm gonna be answering all the questions you guys asked me on my Instagram. I'm going to try to get through every single one. And just because there were so many awesome questions, I was like, you know what? I have to sit down and make a video about this because I truly think that this is really important information, and it's good to know that this could possibly happen to you if you're gonna have a baby. Okay, so without further ado, let's just get straight into the questions. How soon do you walk around and complete household chores after a C-section? So that can kind of go into two parts, because after you have your C-section, they actually try to get you up out of bed, I think around 24 hours after you have your C-section. So they want you to actually get up and to start moving, and not just to lay down in bed for your entire recovery. For household chores, I personally didn't really feel like myself for about 2 weeks, until about 2 weeks postpartum. It can be different for everyone, but definitely not doing strenuous activity is not recommended. So like a lot of bending over or, you know, really working hard on chores is definitely not recommended, and you're not going to want to do them anyway, just because you will be very, very uncomfortable. Having a C-section in 4 weeks, I don't want to throw up. Is there a way to avoid that? So I think it just depends on everyone and their experience. I felt nauseous after my C-section, not during. I've never felt nauseous during my C-sections, which I'm thankful for. Who knows, it might happen this time, but I did feel nauseous after my daughter, but I didn't with my second. So I think it just depends on you and how you're feeling, but I really don't think that there's any way for you to honestly avoid that. It can just be something that happens when you have your C-section. Is having a third C-section safe? So yes, it is safe to have a third C-section, but there are always higher risks to your operation because you have had 2 before. Unfortunately, this is my third. I didn't wish to have C-sections. I didn't choose to have C-sections for my previous births. So this is the first time that actually choosing to have a scheduled C-section. I did try to have 2 vaginal births, but it just did not end up happening for me, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, this is the safest route for me, and a C-section is safest for me as opposed to trying to have a vaginal birth. Do you feel anything when they do the cut? How would you describe how it feels? So no, you do not feel like any pain whatsoever when they are making the incision. They make sure that you are completely numb. But the thing is too, you feel 0 pain, but you do feel uncomfortable. Like, it's kind of hard to explain. And I've had 2 different experiences. So one having a spinal, and then one having an epidural, and then administering the spinal medication through the epidural. So it was a little bit different with my son the second time than it was with my daughter. I didn't feel as much sensation with my daughter. It just kind of felt like there was an elephant sitting on my legs and like my torso, and I just couldn't move. I didn't feel anything pain related at all. You just feel a lot of pressure, but that's kind of it. But with the epidural, I felt a little bit more pressure and a little bit more feeling, but it wasn't painful whatsoever. Which birth recovery was easier, Brielle or Kellen's? My second C-section was actually much easier to recover from than my first. I'm not entirely sure why that is, but I honestly I was like, feels so good already. Like, I feel so good so much sooner than I did with Brielle. Even though with Kellen, I labored for like 3 days, which is crazy. Even though I did that, I had an easier recovery with him. And I had a more intense C-section with him. So maybe it was just my body kind of knowing what to do after. I'm not sure. But with Brielle, I definitely had a harder recovery. And I remember trying to walk for the first time with her, and I was just like, how in the heck am I gonna be able to recover from this? This is so intense. At the end of the day, me sharing all this information for you guys, just a little disclaimer to put in here. This is not to scare you about having a C-section, because I truly believe that without my C-sections, I would not have survived, and my babies wouldn't be here either. But it is major surgery at the end of the day, and I'm just trying to shed more light on the situation and talking about some of the nitty-gritty details that a lot of people will leave out. So I hope that's helpful for you to hopefully prepare you for what is to come. Are you always waiting to hold baby, or do you get to hold him immediately? So it all depends on the situation. It all depends on the hospital and their protocols. But once baby is born, they bring them around to see, so you can see them. You probably will not get to hold them right away. They will probably take them off to make sure that they're okay and everything. And then they will bring them back to you, and then you'll be able to cuddle them for a little bit. Of course, it depends on your own wishes, depending how baby's doing, how you're doing, and of course the entire situation, because even with C-sections, birth can be so vastly different, even within a C-section, for person to person. So that's kind of what traditionally happens, but you do get to hold your baby very soon after they are born. Do you wish you could have given birth vaginally? Yes, I do. I do wish that I could have had that experience, and I tried 2 times. So I think that because I had to have C-sections, I accepted it, and I was like, okay, you know what? I had wishes for that, but at the end of the day, this is what is going to happen, and I'm just going to go with it. And now I am very, very happy with what happened, because I am okay, my babies are okay, and at the end of the day, that's what all really mattered to me. But do I wish I could have had them? In some ways, yes, I would have loved to have that experience, but at the same time, I didn't. So I don't like live in the past because something didn't happen the way I wanted to, and I've just kind of accepted for what things happened, or how they happened. Do you get the epidural first before the catheter? They will insert the catheter after you cannot feel anything. Thank goodness. So I've never had to experience what that feels like with having feeling down there, because I really would not want to deal with that. But that is what has happened to me. They have made me numb and then put in the catheter so I don't have to feel it. How to care for the other kids after C-section. What I highly recommend you do is to get someone to come help you, especially for the first week. For me, with my second, I did not have this luxury. I had to take care of my 2 kids 3 days after my C-section, and I do not recommend not having anyone to be there for you. Because you are still very fresh postpartum and still very much in recovery mode at that point. So I highly recommend, if you are able to have someone come help you for the majority of the day with your other kids, that would be wonderful. But if not, take it easy as much as you can. Just sit on the couch, watch a lot of TV, get snacks, things like that, because you are able to walk around. But definitely take things very slow. And just, for us, we watched a lot of TV, and that's kind of what I did to survive that time. Do you use some sort of belly wrap or support after? So I actually didn't with my first, and I was totally fine. With my second, I did use kind of like a support belly band, and it really did make me feel like I was a little bit more supported. You can find some compression underwear or even high-waisted leggings will really, really help. So you don't need to actually go out and buy like some special, belly compression band or anything. It does help, but I found that even just wearing high-waisted leggings did the job, and it felt like I was a little bit more put together, which was really great. Do they pull the placenta out through your incision or out vaginally? So they will actually just take everything out through your incision. You don't have to worry about them taking the placenta out vaginally. They will make sure that there is nothing left within your uterus, and then they will stitch you back up. So thankfully, you do not have to deliver the placenta through vaginally, and they will just take everything out of your incision. Do you have any fears? I've had 2 C-sections and planning on babe number 3. So I am a little bit nervous just because I have gone through it before, so I kind of know what to expect. But at the end of the day, this should be very routine. I'm very low risk. Baby is doing great. And so there really shouldn't be any complications, but at the end of the day, I kind of know what is to come. And since my last birth with my son was a little bit traumatic for me and how things progressed and how things happened, I am a little bit nervous just because of my previous experience. If you guys want to know kind of what happened with that, you can go watch like my old birth story or my birth vlog I had with my son, and kind of watch that to get the details. But it was a bit of a harder birth for me, and so I do feel a little bit nervous because of that, like I said. But overall, I think everything's gonna be fine, and at the end of the day, it's kind of out of my control, and I just know that I just have to just try to be as peaceful as I can and not trying to worry about what could happen when we haven't gotten to that point yet. So does milk come later after C-section compared to vaginal birth? So I don't know if you've known this, but your milk is in already when you have your baby. When you have colostrum in your breasts, you can actually have this from even as early as the second trimester, and it does sustain your baby until your full milk comes in a few days later. So for me, my milk didn't take longer to come in after my C-section, because as soon as I was able to do skin to skin, I was able to. And that was honestly, I'd probably say 15 to 20 minutes after they were born. So it's really not that long of a time in between, you know, a regular routine C-section without complications and you being able to do skin to skin with your baby. And so basically, just for you to increase your milk supply after a C-section is just doing tons of skin to skin, feeding and trying to feed as much as you can, and just being able to be close to your baby. So it really actually doesn't change much from vaginal birth to C-section about, you know, the time it takes for your milk to come in. How many C-sections can you have? I always thought it was 2. So I think this definitely differs from location. Here in Canada, they do not recommend more than 3 C-sections, but it is possible. So if you do get pregnant, I mean, they're gonna do what they can do to make it as safe as possible, but there's always an increased risk of certain things like uterine rupture the more C-sections that you have. Course. So of course there's going to be increased risk, but it is still possible to have numerous C-sections. But I think here kind of the limit that they are hoping for women to kind of stop at is around 3. Just like I said, the risks just go higher the more you have. Do they cut on your previous scar or do they remove it? What does your scar look like? So they do cut on your previous scar because they just want to go where the previous incision was. So then you don't have like 3 different scars in the same place. I don't really know how they would be able to remove it except for like cutting it out, and I just think that would be, I don't think they would do that. So they just honestly cut right on the same incision, and right now my scar is looking a little bit more red than it usually would if I'm not pregnant, just because the skin is stretching there, and my skin is definitely a lot more sensitive when I am pregnant. How long did you take pain medication afterwards? Around 2 weeks is when I stopped taking pain medication, and that's when I kind of felt like I was more feeling like myself. So I think it was around 2 weeks or so. What is the hardest part about having a C-section? Okay, that's a really good question, because there's a lot of things that are hard about having a C-section, but to be honest with you, I think the recovery is the hardest part. Just because it is so long and it's so prolonged, because with a vaginal birth, sometimes women can have a really long recovery, but majority of the time, a lot of women they can pick up their baby, they can do everything right after, and they have no problem just kind of jumping back into life after having a baby. But with a C-section, it takes a long time for you to recover. And so I think that's probably the worst part about it, and just the amount of pain that you're in after a C-section. So that's why it's super important to stay on top of those pain medications that you have, because you can feel very, very uncomfortable, and things like laughing and sneezing and coughing and all that stuff just hurts so much in the first week or 2. So I think that's probably the hardest part. Did you need to have Luke help you in the middle of the night, like to get out of bed? So I actually didn't need Luke to help me get out of bed. I actually just used my pregnancy pillow in the bed to help me get up. It's really good for you to have something if you're going from sitting up to standing or laying down to sitting, that you have something to kind of pull yourself up with instead of just using all of your ab muscles, because it is really painful. And so I just use my pregnancy pillow to just kind of like pull myself up, or even use like the bed and the bed sheets to just kind of pull myself up with. And so I didn't actually need his help with that, but you definitely will need something to kind of assist you to pull up. So if you need your partner to, you can definitely wake them up and ask them to help you, because it will be difficult to sit up. Do nurses give good support after your C-section, or are usually wanting to go home? The nurses are great. Like, the care that I received for both of my surgeries were absolutely amazing, and I had some of the best nurses ever. They want to keep you there as usually around 2 nights, but if you're doing really well and you want to go home, they will allow you to go home with a doctor's approval. So for Brielle, I stayed 2 nights. And then I was like, okay, I'm ready to go home. Like, I just want to be home. I don't like staying in the hospital for too long. But with Kellen, I was able to leave after 1 night, because he was born in the middle of the night. And then we spent 1 full night there. And then the next kind of evening, we were able to go home. So almost 2 full days. Postpartum bleeding still happens, but do you have vaginal pains at all? No, you shouldn't have any vaginal pain at all, just because if it's a scheduled C-section, you would not have labored. With my previous 2 births, I did labor for an extensive period of time, and so I did have a lot of swelling. But with this time, since I'm hoping not to go into labor at all and experience that, it should be a bit of a faster recovery, and therefore I don't think I even experienced really a lot of vaginal pain postpartum. So I'd probably say no. Post C-section, when do you start to work out? So usually your doctor will give you the go-ahead to be able to do regular physical activity things around 6 weeks postpartum. Again, it depends on your recovery and things like that, but most likely it'll be around 6 weeks. Wondering if recovery after a scheduled C-section is less painful / easier versus an unplanned C-section. So I actually talked to the OB who is doing my C-section. I actually asked him this question, and he said yes, because you aren't having all of those contractions and the swelling afterwards. So recovery should be a lot faster and quicker. And he even said that you won't have as much bleeding, which is super interesting. So I'm kind of curious to see if this is actually true for me, but overall I can kind of see that that would be an easier recovery, just because you're just going in for the surgery and that's kind of it. How is dealing with the incision afterwards? So the incision, to be honest with you, it looks scary, because it is a big scar, and it's something that you may not be used to seeing. And so when I took off my bandage, that was honestly really hard for me to see, just because I knew that this was going to be a permanent part of my body for the rest of my life. And it looked kind of scary with the stitches and with all the bandages on there. But as time goes on, it really does heal up nicely. And to be honest with you, I'm really proud of my scar. As time goes on, I've just realized that this is just such an amazing thing for me. It's kind of like a badge, you know, to say that, wow, this is where my babies were born and I was able to do this. But taking care of it, basically you want to keep the scar completely dry as much as you can. Keep anything like underwear or waistbands off of your scar, because that will be really irritating and painful, and that can increase the chances of infection. So you just want to make sure that you're not having anything directly on there. You're wearing loose pants or loose clothing, especially the first few weeks as you are healing. Also, when you're in the shower, you want to just let water run down off of it. Don't rub it, don't try to wash it, just let water run off of it. And then you want to make sure that you're patting it to dry and not rubbing at all. How long did you wait in between C-sections to have another baby? So they recommend that you wait at least an entire year before getting pregnant after having a C-section. We waited about, I think it was around, it was past 18 months, but it was in between like 2 and 18 months when we got pregnant again after me having a C-section. So we almost gave it about 2 years, and I felt like that was a really good amount of time for my body to heal properly. And I really haven't had any complications because of us waiting that time period in between. Any tips on how to calm yourself down as you start getting prepped at the hospital? To be honest with you, just taking deep breaths really helps me. I know sometimes I can get really overwhelmed, and just being able to ground myself with my breathing really helps. I find that focusing on the end result is another great way to just calm yourself down, knowing that it is a short period of time that you're gonna go through the surgery, and it will not be super long. And at the end, like I said, is your beautiful baby that you get to meet. So I find just regulating your breathing, focusing on the positive things, and not getting too worked up about things that ultimately are out of our control, but we can just try to go through it with an open mind, and knowing that you'll be able to meet your baby at the end. So anyways, that is where I'm going to end today's video. Thank you guys so much for all your amazing questions. I know that I am so excited for this next week and a little bit, anticipating the birth of our baby and going through another C-section. I know I am feeling like, okay, wow, like I know what to expect this time, but it just makes me so excited to be able to meet him and just kind of start our lives with him, a part of things outside of my belly. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful. I hope that you will maybe get some little bit more insight onto how C-sections work and kind of everything about them. And yeah, we'll see you guys in my next one. Bye guys.